And welcome to all of you viewing from around the world. We're really happy to have you here.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New
What
Year.
a great start.
And we have this wonderful webinar in front of us with Stephen Gilligan and Robert Dilts, the creators of Generative Change, the creators of Generative Coaching. This is a rare opportunity to see them both together, and probably the only time they'll be teaching Generative Coaching together virtually this year.
And I just would like to say thank you, Stephen and Robert, for bringing generative change into the world, because it is a beautiful transformational model.
And to get the new year off to a generative start, let's welcome Robert Dilts and Stephen Gilligan.
Hello, everybody.
Great.
Happy New Year.
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, Richard Knoxella.
Well,
Hi. Such a pleasure.
Robert and I are here in beautiful California, sunny San Diego. I don't know if sunny Santa Cruz.
It's
Robert.
sunny Santa Cruz today. Yes.
Great. And yeah, we're really appreciating this opportunity to open the new year in a positive way. And we really hope and wish for a great 2021. It shouldn't be too difficult to make it better than 2020. What a year. But we want to take this time, we've got about 90 minutes to really just share a little overview of the work that Robert and I have been doing for what, 15 years, Robert?
Yeah, more, I think. Yeah, at least 15. And kind of the seeds of that go back even further, I think.
Yeah.
The specific, our specific work here with what we want to present on generative coaching is something that has been formalized, I think, for just about 15 years.
So this is really the heart and soul of our collaborative work. And if there was one word that we could use to describe the core of the work, it's creativity. And we see creativity as even a deeper distinction than love. And if you got two California hippies finding a distinction deeper than love, you know you're onto something big.
And I think given what has been happening in the world this last year, we see even more and more need for creativity of all types and on all different levels. And this is really what generative coaching is devoted to, is how can we help each other to live a more creative and fulfilling life.
So in this 90 minutes, we want to take about a half hour to share an overview of this generative coaching work that we have collaboratively developed. And then we'd like to do a demonstration of what we call the base 6-step model of generative coaching. And then we'll open it to Q&A after that.
Yeah. So our history goes back farther than 15 years. It goes back 45 years, pretty much now, to here at the University of California at Santa Cruz, where we were students of people like John Grinder, Richard Bandler, who were co-developers of NLP, but also people like Gregory Bateson and Milton Erickson. And these really sort of planted the seeds of this this notion of a creative view of life.
And the really great thing about our teachers is that we would include in that Gregory Bateson, Milton Erickson, John Grinder, and Richard Bandler, is you had so many students coming out of each of those teachers. And the interesting thing is that the uniqueness or the differences between the different maps that these different students presented is really, really quite remarkable.
Yeah, and I think it shows how it's like this whole notion of how we can take something, and one of the kind of metaphors we often use is this idea of a prism, where a white light comes in, and it can be broken into multiple other colors. And I think this idea of using our filters creatively is one of the essential pieces of generative change, and especially of generative coaching.
So the first step in the process is opening some safe creative state in one way or another. And one of the things that we look at is all these multiple languages of creativity, one being verbal, a second being somatic, a third being field. And in the verbal, the use of verbal language for creativity, we're really emphasizing that the primary use of language for creativity is more poetic and musical rather than literal.
And this also goes back even further into our heritage, this deep belief in that since both of us are half Irish, so to honor our half Irish roots, we often like to begin a session like this with a couple of poems.
Partly to honor our cultural roots, and partly really to emphasize that we're looking to see how every word that we use in coaching is like a poetic symbol that shimmers through the body. And as it does, it opens up all of these many, many, many possible meanings. And that's one of the heart and souls of creativity.
Yeah.
So we're trying to use verbal language to touch through the felt sense of the body and see what it uniquely opens that's tied not only to the verbal mind, but the somatic mind.
So sort of using, as we say, using words, using language to kind of open that prism, so that if you take a word being like this, the white light that's coming into the prism, and seeing, okay, how many possible meanings can that open or trigger for us?
So speaking of Ireland, the poem that I would like to share with you is from a West Irish poet, priest, writer. His name is John O'Donoghue. He's grew up not too far away from where the Gilligans are in Western Ireland. And this beautiful poem is called For Longing, for longing.
Mm.
And here's what John O'Donoghue says. Blessed be the longing that brought you here and quickens your soul with wonder. May you have the courage to listen to the voice of desire that disturbs you when you have settled for something safe. May you have the wisdom to enter generously into your own unease, to discover the new direction your longing wants you to take. May the forms of your belonging in love, in creativity, and friendship be equal to the grandeur and to the call of your soul. May the one you long for you, and may your dreams gradually reveal the destination of your desire. May a secret providence guide your thought and nurture your feeling. May your mind inhabit your life with the sureness with which your body inhabits the world. May your heart never be haunted by ghost structures of old damage. And may you come to accept your longing as divine urgency. May you know the urgency with which God longs for you. And may your mind inhabit your life with the sureness with which your body inhabits the world.
Beautiful. I think that says a lot again about what we've been sharing in terms of where, and we'll see how a lot of what generative coaching is helping us to connect to that place of a deep longing that's not just coming from an ego space, but it's really coming from our being. My poem is written by a colleague of ours, Nick LaForce, And I think it illustrates a few other things about being a generative coach, as well as living a generative.
There's a guy who's on the screen who's a sort of looks like Nick LaForce.
He's in our on the. I don't know that everybody else can see him, even if we can. Anyway,
Hi, Nick.
So to honor Nick, this is called. So Nick's poem. It's called "We Are Messengers," and Nick says, "We are messengers. We may leave our footprints on the earth, but we walk in heaven. Our light shines beyond our own vision, and our words sink deeper than our own wisdom. We teach that what we have lived before does not determine who we can become. What we have lived before does not determine who we can become. And we follow a simple truth of the heart, that what we see in others, we awaken in ourselves. What we see in others, we awaken in ourselves, and we become what we give to the world. We become what we give to the world." And I think these teachings that Nick has so beautifully captured in this poem are key parts also of what we work at in generative change and generative coaching.
So if we were just to summarize these key points about creativity that form the underbelly, the framework for generative coaching.
And maybe we can get
we've got
a couple of the slides up here, Fyodor, as well. We summarize this.
So we have this first premise that's sort of a working mantra, if you will, which is everything we know as reality is created. It may seem subjectively like there's an independent world out there, but in short, there isn't. Everything we experience as reality, we are creating. And that doesn't mean just an individual verbal conscious mind is creating everything. That's really not what we mean at all. Many of those creative patterns have been in play for hundreds, even thousands of years. Most of them are embedded in systems like families and cultures and groups. But nonetheless, each individual has the capacity to mindfully use that core of creativity in an infinite number of different ways.
So we like to point out that these, and here you can see on the slide, is that beautiful image of a prism, that we, through our filters, we're translating what we would call quantum imagination. That is this realm of and field of all possibilities into a classical reality, into a concrete form or shape. And so we do that through, as Stephen was saying earlier, through these filters that we have, our somatic filters of our body, the cognitive filters of our thinking, but also the filters of this field, as Stephen was just mentioning, our families, our cultures, but even nature becomes a type of field in which we can then absorb and again bring into some type of expression.
And basically, we would just point out that all of psychology is the study of filters. All psychological research is usually independently varying some sort of state or filter condition, and then seeing how it influences somebody's experience, somebody's behavior, so forth and so on. So I get you to learn something in this room, and then I have you remember it in another room. I put you in a social context, and I put somebody else in a different social context, and we see how those different types of states or those different types of filters produce a fundamentally different experiential reality.
So we're saying that it's the state of our filters that are going to determine the way in which we both perceive and respond to whatever is going on around us. And this is core to the generative change work, and especially generative coaching, is how we can bring those filters into what we would call a generative state.
So we might say that the core question that we're organizing a generative coaching conversation around is, what is it that you most want to create in your life? What's your positive intention? What's your longing? What is it that you're called to do? And the first thing that we're looking at are, what are the conditions under which you're trying to make that happen? Because before somebody comes into the conversation with you, they have been attempting, in most cases, for a long time to achieve this goal. People don't come into coaching because they woke up that morning and said, here's what I want to create. I'll go have my first conversation with my coach. They're coming to see you because there's something that they really want to be able to create in the world, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to. So the first thing that we're looking at is, what's the state that is stopping you from creatively acting? Or practically, as you hold that intention, how's your body organized? So if you look at me, and if I'm saying like, I really, really want to be able to create this sense of confidence in my work, and you look at that and you say, no way, Jose, no way. Right?
Or
so
I just really want to have a better relationship. It's probably not going to be very effective.
Or if I was talking with somebody in China and I said, well, what is it you want to set as your intention? And she said, I just don't want to feel quite so bad in my marriage. So say you were using that as your mantra, don't feel so bad, quite so bad in your marriage. So if we use that somatic state or that verbal pattern as the base for our creative interests, guess what will happen?
So we're saying, Steve was sharing that poem this morning about our longing, right? There's something that we want to create more in our lives. And I think one of the things that this year 2020 has taught us is kind of hopefully bringing us to some of those places of longing. Of sometimes it's because of when we're unable to have certain things that we take for granted, we realize, well, what is most important and what is it that we long for? So we want to be able to take that longing and transform that into our actual reality.
So this is why we're really looking at, what state are you in as you go to create something desirable in your life? What's your body state? What's your cognitive verbal state? What words are you using? What meanings are you imparting? What is your sense of a state in terms of your connection with everything all around you, the people around you, the people in your life, the people in your field? If those states are in lockdown, then you will not be able to create anything positive. So this brings us to this third premise, which is as important as the pattern of the state is, even more important is the underlying human context in which it's being held.
So we say, if this is probably, again, one of the cores of the generative coaching work, is what is that state that is holding, that underlying sense of that state that is holding whatever it is that we're working with. And we say that can be either mindless or mindful. And when we say it's held mindlessly, and especially in what we would call a state of neuromuscular lock, you're actually, instead of having a progress towards something that you want, you're going to probably either be regressing or simply repeating and going in circles.
So we call these either the underlying state is either crash or coach. These are acronyms. Maybe we can go to the next slide.
Yeah. So where we say that in crash, it's a state of the filters where we are contracted, reactive, kind of caught in analysis paralysis. We're sort of separated from ourselves and our resources, and in a place of, hostility, and harmfulness to ourselves or others.
Robert is a really great artist. So this was his rendition of me every time I hear Donald Trump speak. So, oh my God.
This is before the first cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Well, so it doesn't matter how many cups of coffee. Every time Trump speaks, that's how I look. So 15 more days.
But this, by the way, is a very this is an exaggerated example. This is pretty much obvious to everybody. But in generative change and generative coaching, what we realize, these kind of states happen very subtly. It can happen in almost imperceptibly sometimes, where a person's breath stops, the shoulders tense a little bit, their eyes become fixed or fixated, and it's something that we are not often taught to pay attention to in the flow of a conversation. And yet sometimes these very subtle crashes can have a very significant influence in what is possible to, to express or to experience.
So you could see that this acronym is a way of representing these different dimensions of a non-creative state. That your being is contracted, it's reacting, fight, flight, freeze, fold. It's usually up in the head, paralyzed in a disembodied analysis. It feels separate and isolated from the larger field, and it feels hostile. Either feels that there's hostility towards you, or you feel hostility and fear towards the rest of the world. So no matter how much you want to achieve something, no matter how motivated, no matter how prepared, this basic idea is, if you're in this brain muscle lock, you will not be able to achieve your positive intention.
It's going to take you in circles, and pretty much all that's available to you are these fundamental survival strategies that we call the 4 F's of neuromuscular lock. The only ways I have of trying to achieve what I want, as Steve was saying, is in that state is either to fight against it, to run away from it, to freeze, or to give up, to fold.
So this is our practical understanding of why it is that very intelligent, very motivated people can continue to create the same negative outcome in some important area of their life over and over and over, despite every effort and every intention to do otherwise. Their underlying state is in lockdown. So your mission should...
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I was just
your mission should...
This is the great thing about Zoom.
Yeah.
After you.
Your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to have a person as your first step, as you'll see, is to shift their underlying state from this state of lockdown to this state of open presence, which we call in the work the coach state.
The coach state. I was just about to say the same thing. So that our goal is, okay, so we want to bring these filters into a more functional, creative state. And that's where we use this acronym of coach, which I think is very relevant, obviously, for coaching. But this, the letters coach, we use to characterize these different aspects of a creative state. And the first is to be centered, especially physically centered in the body, and usually in the physical center of the body, which is the belly center.
So this is what we propose practically as a necessary condition for any sort of creative change. That you cannot go outside of your box, out of your habit sets, out of your history. You cannot do anything new, which is what we mean by generative. It's a certain form of doing something new, unless you're in a state of open presence. And what we do with the coach is try to look a little bit more clearly in terms of what that means in terms of the experiential dimensions. The sense of being able to have your center not up in your head, not focused on other people, but dropping down lower in your body. And then to feel it's not just going inside, it's opening your awareness through everything in the field of awareness.
So this idea from that center, we're opening to this field of possibilities, and then bringing our attention out into still holding that sense of ourselves and our center, but expanding that sense of our awareness into that field of possibilities.
And you could do that and then act if you have also these positive connections to not only to this underlying positive welcoming state, but a sense of I'm connected to a positive intention. I'm connected to resources that keep me in the playing field in a good positive way, and I'm connected to my my mind-body center. So
and
these are all practical distinctions. And they're really a central piece of what we're doing in generative coaching. You know, saying
when we can do that, we also have this state of what we're calling hospitality instead of hostility. We can actually welcome whatever is there with from a place of curiosity, resourcefulness, respect, creativity, and this is really what we're looking at to build with our clients, especially in generative coaching.
This is psychologically, I mean, we say that all your experience really is a function of your relationship to what is showing up in each moment. And you can't control what's showing up in each moment, but it's your choice about how you are relationally connecting with what's coming up. And we say that things stay stuck when you are having a hostile relationship to them. So trying to change something is the main way something doesn't change. Thinking that you have to get rid of something is the main way that you keep it center front as a problem. This is one of those seemingly counterintuitive points that to change something, you give up trying to change it and you extend your human connection to it. This is what we mean by hospitality.
And it's one of the reasons we've chosen, as you see the image on the slide, is Nelson Mandela, who is a tremendous example of that. I mean, the type of abuse and hostility that was directed towards him and his ability to stay. You see this beautiful being, you can see this humanity, this smile, of being able to welcome that, even be with that. And through that form of hospitality is where it becomes actually truly transformed.
Okay, so everything that we know as reality is constructed. The creative process is going through this lattice or this matrix of filters.
Yeah.
These filters are being held either with an underlying open presence of kindness, curiosity, support, or it's being held in this really locked down, hostile, negative state, that will determine whether the same exact pattern unfolds as a resource and a solution, or whether it unfolds as a problem and a symptom. Your relationship to it is by far the most important thing.
So when we meet the types of challenges that all of us have been facing in this past year, and as we look ahead to the coming year, the question is, what's the difference between whether that creates a breakdown or a breakthrough? And we suggest that that all comes down to fundamentally the state of these filters. And that when we're in a crash state, we're essentially it's going to be degenerative. It's going to be problem creating. Now, again, just want to point out that crash does not have to be, a complete crash. We put things on a scale of 0 to 10. If 0 was complete crash, there's still times when I'm 4 or 5. It means I'm not going to be fully in this generative creative state. So this is a big part of what we focus on in the generative coaching work.
So a slightly different way of talking about the filters is when we look at what are the filters somebody is using to try to create a new reality, we move from our first set of distinctions, somatic, cognitive, field, and we go to this, what we would call a performance system, where we have these crucial pieces in terms of what's the intention and how are you representing that? What's your connection to your present state? How are you representing that? What are the obstacles that are inevitably a part of any significant challenge? How are you representing those? What are the resources that you will need to keep yourself tuned and ready and positive? And how are you representing that? What are the ideas that you have about how you're going to get from present state to desired state? How are you representing those maps? And then what's the underlying state? Whew, that's a mouthful.
But we can summarize that. We can summarize that in our...
There we go. Robert, great slide.
In our 6 steps of generative coaching. And I mean, and as Steve, just as you were expressing, you could really hear that it's a journey. And when we were doing generative coaching, coach and client are taking a journey together. And I think one of the most important things also in generative change and generative coaching is that when we are working with somebody else, it's not only this notion of the individual state of my filters and their filters, it's this collective state of our filters. We like to say, in generative process, 1 + 1 makes more than 2. It can make 3, 4, 5, or more. And that has to do with this notion of the quality of relationship. And that's always, as we say, that's always going to be our first step in generative change, is not just going into a unique coach state, but opening what we would call a coach field that's holding this whole interaction.
So this always starts with the coach. So the coaching, the quality of the coaching session is a function of the quality of the coach's state. So what Robert's alluding to is that the traditional way of talking about helping people as therapists, as coaches, as consultants, it's usually the client is over there, the experience is over there, and I'm an outsider who is supposed to come up with these brilliant technical methods for being able to help them to achieve their goals. But we're saying that the generative mind is always in the conversation itself.
It's a relational mind in a sense. Yeah.
And because the client is usually bringing in areas of their life where they're shut down, they're unconsciously in crash, you are opening, the first thing that you can do is open that place of coach presence in you, and then be able to extend it to include your client, and then to be able to open to a place where you feel that you're both part of the same creative mind, part of the same creative conversation.
Once we open that field, we say our second step in generative coaching is we're now saying, well, what is that longing that wants to, be brought into, more into expression? What is that positive intention or goal that the client is really wanting to achieve? And here, what becomes important is we say it's the way we represent that goal. If I simply represent it as some kind of abstract verbal map, not much is going to happen. It can stays more of a wish actually than a goal or an intention. To really turn something into an intention, we say in generative coaching, I need to not only be able to verbalize it, but I need to be able to picture it, to see it, and especially to feel it as a somatic expression in my body.
So of course we're on step 2 now.
Yeah.
And I would just point out, and to complement what Robert's saying, I have found I take the longest amount of time on this step. It takes more time than I anticipate, more than any other step. Because until you have the right question, until you have the right intention, nothing really sustainable is going to happen. And so, it's a pretty simple question. What do you want? But it's not, if it was an easy answer, you probably wouldn't be having a professional conversation with them.
And usually we say it's a little more deeply than just what do you want. We like to, our core question we ask at this step is, what is it that you most want to create in your life? And I think that takes us more to this place of what that John O'Donohue poem about longing was getting at. It's not just some kind of superficial egoistic desire. We're really looking in generative change to really, make that sense of a deep transformation.
So we talk about, just briefly, that it needs to be succinct, 5 words or less. It needs to be positive, something that you would actually experience or achieve out in the world. And it needs to be resonant both in the client's body. So when they speak it, you can feel that it's touching somewhere deep in them, which is necessary. You can also, you want to sense that it needs to touch you as the coach, because if it's not, if a person is not touching other people with their intention, nobody's going to notice and nobody's going to support it. So intention. Then the third state is to say, okay,
let's go into a generative performance state. How exactly are you going to really be able to bring this into reality? And Steve has alluded previously to these 3 types of connections. One is to, what is my intention, my goal? One is to, what is in me? Where does that touch me? And where is my felt sense of commitment to that in my body and being? And the third is, what field of resources can support me in reaching that goal or moving towards that intention?
So we have these as somatic models: intention, mind, body, center, resources. Right?
And once we we can.
What is it that you can do? What actions can you take?
That's our step 4, is we say you're kind of really either doing action planning or you're really starting to move into action. So I start moving towards that intention. What are the actual concrete steps? Now, here's where we say we're moving from more of a dreamer mindset to more of a realist expression.
And somewhere along the way, usually before step 5, is that you run into these crash states that sometimes just asking a person, what do you want? You'll see them go into a shutdown state. So as soon as you invite people to connect with their intention, you'll run into the yes, but. Yes, this is what I want, but I've got these negative voices that tell me I can't. I've got these fears. I've got these memories. I've got all these things that we generally group under the term of obstacles. Usually in traditional approaches, these are the enemies, and you try to get rid of them. You try to destroy them. And the idea is once all my obstacles are removed, then I'll live happily ever after. Good luck.
I think
But
one of the
we're really
key principles
Same.
of generative change is the opposite of that. As we said, it's actually this hospitality, this sense of hospitality towards the obstacle, to actually not only just welcome it, but to seek it, to realize without those obstacles, we cannot be generative. We need to have those parts, these obstacles, because partially they're showing us where our blind spots are. They're showing us where we're lacking some kind of sense of wholeness or harmony in this this larger field that we're operating in.
I was just working with somebody last week, and she really wanted to create this new type of work in her professional community. And she said, but, this part of me that is so vulnerable and so insecure and feels that I'm not enough is that always comes up. And I know I have to just get over that and tell myself that I am enough. And, my response is, that is the core of your power, that vulnerability.
Yes.
And it's probably the greatest conspiracy that we have in the whole world is having people believe it's only them. It's only me that feels I'm not enough. It's only me that has this vulnerable place that I'm so terrified of bringing myself into the world. But how many people on the screen would say that you have that part? Yeah. And sincerely, we're not focusing on the negative qualities. We're saying at a more basic level than the negative emotion is the deepest part of your creative spirit. So it's not positive or negative, it's your creative core. And so if we ignore it or just try to positively reframe it, you're going to be living away from your core. So part of the notion of of welcoming obstacles is the obstacles mark the place where the person's creative spirit is deepest.
And as Stephen was pointing out earlier, it then becomes what our relationship to that place that determines whether it is going to be a resource or a problem. If I attack it, it's an enemy. If I run away from it, it's an aggressor. If I freeze, again, it's something that is frightening. If I fold, it's something that's too much. So the question is, what is the state with which I am going to have a relationship with that? And this is where, as Stephen was also saying, becomes so important to bring sort of our human presence to whatever is happening in that place where we're confronting what we consider an obstacle. So we say at this place, this is why we use the term transform obstacles. The obstacle becomes transformed into a resource.
So these are the building blocks of the core elements: the underlying positive state, the intention, the creative coach state, the obstacles that are integrated as part of the creative solution, the sense of completing something and then practicing it, realizing that anything that happens in the session is just a beginning. It just shows you what's possible. It doesn't really become actual until you bring it into the world. And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of commitment.
We point out, that, at the end of any particular coaching session, nothing has actually really changed yet, right? We've opened this potential, this possibility for change, but for that change to actually take place, it's going to need to be put into practice again and again and again. And this is why our step 6 is really about finding, well, what are going to be those repetitive things that we do that are going to continue to reinforce and deepen whatever change has begun in that session.
So these are the constituent elements. And when we do the generative coaching certification or the 4-day generative coaching course, we really are training you to be able to do a session organized around these 6 steps. This is the prototype for the work. And you go through it. There's a beginning version where you're basically following the steps. There is a journeyman version where you're realizing that works maybe 60% of the time, and you have to do a lot of creative responding at certain points. And then there's the mastery level, which they're just sort of poems and prayers, and you see what happens each time. So what we'd like to do at this point is do a little bit of a demonstration to give you a little bit of a taste of the 6-step process.
And the way we thought we'd do it is we would kind of take turns between, one of us would sort of show a way to do one step, and then the next one of us would show a way to do the second step. And as we said, this is really, we don't do this in a rigid way. It really is a journey that you're taking together between coach and client. So again, we'll kind of follow these basic steps of this journey and show again how we might manage each step.
So we've invited Andrea Schmidt, who's from Vienna, because Andrea apparently has a belief that psychotherapy hasn't advanced beyond Freud, because she's been in Vienna that whole time. So we thought we'd give her a little bit of taste of beyond Freud.
I'm very grateful for this.
I'm kidding. Andrea has done a lot of work with us, and she's an incredible coach and psychotherapist. And so I thought it'd be nice just to invite you, Andrea, because I think you could do a deep, authentic experience in this very short time, but also give us a sense of the general structure, help us to illustrate the general structure. So Richard and Oksana, are we going to ask everybody else to turn their cameras off?
I don't think we need to, Steve, because this is what most people are seeing is just the what's on the collective screen. They're not seeing the gallery view.
Oh, so should I change my setting then?
No.
I'm seeing everybody.
I'm seeing gallery view. I see you all. This is Kasia.
Yeah. So Richard, Oksana, how do we get it? So it's just Richard and Andrea and I.
Go to if you pin there's the yellow one that has the 3 of us in it.
Well,
can you see that?
Richard and Oksana, can't we just get people to turn their cameras off? Can't hear you, Richard. Can't hear you.
You hear me? Okay.
Okay.
Will everybody please turn their cameras off?
Please, everybody, turn your camera off. Thank you. Except Andrea, of course.
Andrea, please keep it on. Okay, that's great. And we'll join you also in turning off the camera.
I see. And we have the 3 of us on the generative coaching. That's what you're saying, Robert, if I just pin that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
But now everybody's turned their camera off anyway, so you
yeah. Okay. I think we're good. Andrea, I was going to say good morning. It's still morning for us here in California.
It's evening for us.
Yeah. How's the weather in Vienna?
Oh, it was foggy all the day long. Yeah. And there's no snow.
No snow. Oh, no.
Unfortunately.
So
Yeah.
you did not have a white Christmas, they say.
No,
No,
not this year.
not this year. Not
Well,
this year.
my daughter has her boyfriend's in Long Island, New York, and she was back there for 2 weeks before Christmas, and they had like 2 feet. What is that? Like
Like a meter and a half of snow.
2/3 of a meter. Yeah,
2/3 of a meter, right? 2/3 of a meter.
yeah. So for a San Diego girl, it was pretty interesting for her.
Hmm.
So Andrea, so we've got we're going to take 4 minutes for each step, so that gives us about 25 minutes total. And as Robert, as we mentioned, we'll be going back and forth for each step within 4 minutes. So I hope you don't mind me speaking in one side of you and Robert speaking to the other side.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And
Great.
Robert, I've got my iPhone, so I'll just time it with 4 minutes. And would you like to go first, Robert?
Sure. Why not?
So step 1 is open the coach field. Before you start to act, everybody gets settled and positively connected.
And yeah, so, well, I in this coach field, I want to make sure that it includes, of course, the three of us, but also there is a field of people who are observing us. So I want to invite everybody who's also watching to join us in this coach state. And, that the first part of that is just centering ourselves. And one of my basic principles for that, Andrea, is this notion that, energy follows attention. Energy flows where our attention goes. So if we just sort of bring our attention to just that physical center of the body, especially in the belly center, and just taking the time to find whatever kinds of things that we can do with our bodies, with even our quality of our inner voice, as we sort of descend and bring our attention to this place of a center. Usually when we center, there becomes a greater sense of stillness and of silence, and also of a type of quality of spaciousness. So if we could really just breathe into that center, and then from there, we're sort of opening to this conversation that we're going to have. And Andrea, I know this is, as we would say here in California, this is not your first barbecue or not your first rodeo. And I'm sure that there are probably some practices that you already have yourself for kind of entering into this, what we're calling this coach state, this place of centered openness, readiness. And I'm curious, what's kind of things tend to help you to really get into this place where you feel centered, open, but also alert and connected to yourself and your resources.
Yeah, I use a somatic model for this. So
Yeah.
it is for me very useful to just close my eyes and breathe down, and do this also with my hands, going down and down.
Beautiful. Yeah, I join you in that, and I can feel that. Thank you.
And just then see that my feet are really rooted. Feel this.
Yes.
And then it is a movement like this to open up.
Yeah. When I do that, I feel my breath also really opening, and it seems like there's a brightness that comes. So thank you for that.
And then it is this being aware. And my somatic model is this.
Nice.
.30 seconds.
We have all the time we
I
need.
know.
30 seconds.
Yeah, already connected with all. And have this feeling of holding
Yeah.
and holding whatever will come.
Yeah. I can feel that readiness with you, and I'm really feel this. There's a very, even though you're in Vienna and we're in California, I feel really the sense of a very strong connection to you, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
So that's the first step, and for a lot of clients, you'll need a lot more time than that.
Mm.
But Andrea knows us, so she has some sense of safety, and she's been doing this work. So we don't want to suggest that it's always quite so fast.
Mm.
And then the second step is, from that place, let's really begin to touch upon what is it that you want to focus on in this conversation? What intention? And normally in a conversation, people like to talk a little bit just to give you their story. And in the interest of time, we're just going to cut right to the chase, which is, if you were to use that same centered somatic modeling and begin to do a somatic model for an intention, and then let the words come sort of just slightly behind that. What I most want to create in my life is feel the rhythm, feel the breath, feel the curiosity, feel the commitment, and then you can just speak the words out loud. What I want to create in my life is.
What I most want to create in my life is I want to be really mindful with myself and dare to express.
Yeah. Great. Let's breathe that through. Mindful, able to express. And then I would ask you to just feel it as a rhythm, and let yourself do that maybe 2 or 3 times with that same rhythm. And let yourself be curious each time you do it. What particular areas of your life are you called to be especially mindful these days? Obviously, it could be family relationships or personal relationships or work. So if you just invite you to speak that again, and then just notice which contexts especially get touched there.
It's the context of the personal relationships.
Yeah, great. And you don't have to name names out loud, but I would like you to sense experientially this relationship. I'm really called to be more mindful. I really want to be more mindful in my relationship with. And again, and you could notice that her coach state starts to get a little bit disrupted there. You see her breathing stops. She's going, her eyes go up, so she's thinking about it. So, Robert was saying earlier, it's very subtle how we move from just flow, centered flow, to I'm starting to think about it. So just notice that, Andrea. It's just somebody nice to welcome and say, wow. So as I begin to tune in to specific relationships, something in me begins to activate. That's interesting. So I just invite you to do that one more time, and just notice all the things that get touched in that process. I really want to be more mindful in my relationships. Okay. And that's the time, that's all the time we have for this step. So now we shift to step 3, which is finding a creative state to be able to make your dream come true. Step 3. Go for it, Robert.
Well, actually, what occurs to me, in this step 3, we're going to be working with making these 3 positive connections that we were speaking of earlier, to this intention that you have, and then to yourself, your center, and then to the field of resources and resources that help you to actually achieve this. I kind of beginning with that intention, I could really see very much in this last movement, especially very mindful sense of that somatic model, and knowing that this is about being, you said, more mindful, and you also said, and daring to, very interesting, like daring to express. And I'm really curious if there's also an image that goes with that when you make that movement and you hold that intention. Is there some kind of an image of what that means for you?
Yeah. It's like what comes up as an image is it is a very very fine porcelain bowl or cup.
Wow.
And these Chinese ones, when the light goes through, there you can see the images that are engraved somehow in this cup, and you can only see it when the sun or the light goes through.
Wow.
This is the image that came up for me.
I'd really like to, have you really hold that image. We can, like we were saying, even breathe that image through as you make that gesture, and you're sort of holding that intention that this is really what I most want to create in my life. So maybe as you have that image, making your somatic model again of that intention, really feel a sense of your connection to that and your commitment to that. This is really what I'm really committed to create in my life. I see a nice smile comes when you do that. And I'm curious, where in your body do you feel that sense of commitment and connection to that intention? Where?
Oh, it's right here.
Right here.
Yeah. And it's got warmer, and it's also a little bit like flittering, a little bit vibrating.
Yeah. Vibrating. That makes sense. I mean, and I want to just say right away, welcome to that vibration. And I think it's seems to me like that flitting has both a sense of excitement and maybe also a little bit of, well, it's a big thing. We like to say that sometimes fear is just excitement without the breath, or the other side. Excitement is fear, but I'm breathing, and I can breathe with that and feel that sense. Yeah, that's where I really am. I know that that's something that's important to me because of that energy, that vibration that's awakened in this place in your body. So just really want to acknowledge that and connect to that. And invite you now also, Andrea, as you sort of hold that sense of that image of that beautiful, porcelain bowl, and that intention to really be more mindful and dare to express yourself in the world, and especially in this place of personal relationships. And then that place where you connect with that inside of you. And the thing I really think would be important to explore right now in this step 3 is what resources are most important to support you in really bringing that intention into reality, to really live that intention fully in your life. What kind of resources would you need, and from where or whom?
what I feel is that I really have to feel the ground today, and that I really have to and to have this feeling of being safe. And
Yes.
this means for me, this is something like being in nature is a really great resource for me.
Yeah. Great.
And
any particular places in nature that show up for you right now that help you to become grounded?
Yeah, there is a meadow on a hill where I can look over the Viennese forest. And there are some trees around, but actually it's really an open place, and I have this feeling of being really near to the sky and also near to the earth. So this is a great place for me.
We're going to really welcome that place, and as we move to pass on to Steve to go to our next step, to really keep that sense of that beautiful, that meadow and that view with you, so you feel that groundedness as well as the open space.
So these are each steps that we build on and move back through that sense of remember the opening connection. It's always, something we come back to multiple times in the session. Remember the intention, bringing more mindfulness into certain relationships, the rhythm of that. Sometimes you find that in the course of the session, your understanding of the intention has changed. And then the third is, what are the positive connections? I was really touched by that image of the Chinese vase, as well as the forest overlooking Vienna. And just breathe that in. And you notice that Andrea's talking about the need to be more mindful, meaning that in that pattern, she's discovering that she was not having full mindfulness, and more safety, meaning that somewhere in that pattern, there was less safety. And so I wonder, in this fourth step, we find what gets triggered or activated that would be an obstacle or an inhibition to being able to step into that more mindful, daring relationship. And if you just take a breath and just sense, well, as I go to do that, some of the things I really feel, would shut me down or be an obstacle for me might be. And I can feel, by the way, it's sort of interesting that when you were sharing with Robert about you felt it in the chest, because I was feeling, before that, when you hit that place of crash, it felt like this incredible tension and grief in your chest. That's just my projection. So I'm just curious, as you touch into that place, you really want to be more daring and more mindful. What do you begin to come up against that we can invite into the tea ceremony? It's time to be more mindful about that's been in the shadow or been in the sort of negative frame.
But it is this of being ashamed, not being right, doing something really. How can you do this? This is the sentence that comes to me.
Yeah. Right. So there was that voice, and just notice where in your body you sort of feel that attack or that criticism or that lack of support. Where does that?
tightens my throat, and it really cuts off my words.
Yeah, isn't that great? So that easy for me to say, right?
Yes.
But as you really start tuning into all the different things that are important to be mindful about, and stay connected to the forest and to the Chinese vase, you realize, you know, there's parts of my history where I was really attacked or criticized, and it really, some things got locked in here. So some important part of your mindful daring is in your throat. So maybe you could just bring your hands up there and drop down. You see how her eyes lift up? She's sort of lifting away from it. Go down to the forest. Feel the Chinese vase. And just open a place. I don't know exactly all that's connected, but I know it's part of me. And part of my daring mindfulness is to create a safe space, whatever is trapped in the throat. Welcome. Welcome. I don't know if you could notice, but from her neck down, something just dropped. So she's taking that, and rather than going away from it up into the clouds, the underbelly underneath just dropped. And you can begin to bring that into the forests of Vienna, into the beauty of the Chinese vase. And I'm sorry that I actually went to the fifth step. Sorry, Robert.
I think we can, it's okay, we can
to show
continue
you
with that transformation, because step 4 is about moving into action. And often when we do move into action, that's when we start to dare and we meet those places. And I think just to maybe help complete this transformation, Andrea, that for me, once you can hold that in this new place, you know, so instead of this sense of, what were the words again, Andrea? You said they were
Cut up my voice.
Yeah, but what were the words that were actually there? You said, I say these, I hear these words or say them to myself.
How can you do this?
How can you do this? So really want to now kind of welcome those words. How can you do this? It's an interesting question. How
Great
can I?
question.
And
that's funny. Yeah, because I can. I do.
Yeah.
It's just I can do. Yeah.
So isn't that interesting? That's that idea of transforming, isn't it? And if you could really,
how can you?
Keep holding that. And of course, there's a very positive intention to this question. And you know, as we look to also, well, what's that intention behind that question? How can you do this?
Just can I? It's something like because I want to, because I can, because it is needed to be done.
Wow. Yes. Wow. And as you hold that and kind of connect, keep again your attention on that beautiful porcelain bowl, and perhaps even, you know, that sense of your somatic model of centering and opening, and that sense of standing on that beautiful meadow of the Viennese forest, and sort of really holding that exploration and your response to that. How can I do that? Because it's me, it's what I want to do, and I can. That's so good to know. And I'm curious what happens when you do that.
The movement is like this, and
Yes.
it's just like it's really a lot of space and freedom and kind of
Yeah.
light.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I noticed this gesture. It's sort of like this transforms to this. That's nice to know. Maybe kind of repeating that somatic model a little bit to really get that feeling for, yeah. And I see actually your whole posture right now is different. Your shoulders are more back, and I see you daring to come and I say, welcome. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. And I think, so here we see several steps of this, actually several parts of the step 5. One is really identifying the crash, creating that place of welcoming it. And then this notion of helping to bring those resources so that we transform its meaning. And like Stephen was saying, that place there is such a creative, that's your creative energy. And when you can release that, it is one of your biggest resources. So very beautiful.
Thank you.
And the one thing I would just sort of want to add to that is when we talk about those obstacles, you have this sort of the outer critic. How could you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then what we just tapped into from the coach state is this sort of resource state. How can I do it? So there's a real contextual shift.
Yeah.
But the other thing we just want to be careful about is there's often a younger wounded girl in there, so that when she was told, how the hell can you do this? She sort of crashed and, disappeared or whatever. And we don't want to isolate her. She's actually been too isolated.
No,
We don't want to give primary focus, but we just want to make sure that you have a connection to her too. So I say, well, how can you do this? How can I do this? And I've got, my the Chinese bowl, I've got my forest, and those connections and all your resources of your adult, yourself as a woman, which just stepped out, and that little girl, who really got wounded.
I kind of saw her coming out a little bit myself too. That girl energy releasing. So yeah, I'm curious what happens there. What's going on with her?
Welcome.
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 When I made this movement and I had this, it was really, and also I changed this, for me this sentence changed. How can I do it? Yes, it was this curiosity, and it was this kind, it was really a great kind of, how can I do it? Try it out. How can I do it? This was, I think this is the connection I have to this younger part of myself. It's just this.
And our step 6 is this idea of practices for deepening this change. And I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you can do to really keep that connection, like you were just saying? How can you take, because we said we've opened this possibility now. What can be your way to?
So I think I as the adult I am, the woman I am, I'm looking. I will look, or I vote myself to look for these possibilities to have this to in a relationship try to experiment a little bit and but to take also good care of how much can I bear to do this. So give a good frame to it, but then just being curious what comes out, not thinking too much, being play and a little bit more. So with this situation, not to have this strict, you have to be right and correct and good and these things.
Oh. I like this idea of play. Seems to me to be really an important piece to that. Playing with it.
Is there a word in German for play?
Spielen.
Spiel. Yes.
I'm kidding you. I'm playing with you.
Oh yeah, of course there is. And the word is spielen. Yeah.
Actually, you're probably familiar with the polyvagal theory of Stephen Borges.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things we get a lot from trauma is the one of the main casualties is you lose the ability to play. Yeah. When you're carrying trauma in your body, you're losing the ability to play. And if you don't have the ability to play, all else is lost in terms of social generativity and social engagement and so forth. So that sounds like a good one. I just want to say in this last step, part of the focus is what sort of daily practices the person has, because all the research in therapeutic outcomes, which applies equally to coaching, is by far the most significant thing that people who are top level practitioners do is they do what Scott Miller, who's sort of the research guru, calls diligent practice, or deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice.
And people, coaches, therapists, I'm sure this is true in any area, the number of hours they're spending each week on deliberate practice is the most significant variable in terms of their how good of positive outcomes they're getting in their work.
So wouldn't it be really interesting, Andrea, to deliberately play, to make sure that you are deliberately playing in this coming weeks?
And to deliberately play with finding those places where you feel that inner critic. So just as a way to finish, we say, let's just move through the 6 steps very briefly.
Yeah.
Step 1, coach feel. Remember, somatic model, coach feel.
Step 2, intention. What do I most want to create in my life? And where?
Every day, when I step into my intention, I feel so many things that have been unconscious begin to illuminate. Step 3, coach state, intention, center, resource.
Step 4, moving into action, really putting this into expression, this intention expression in my life.
Step 5, just looking forward to all these places of learned obstacles, fears, conditioning, lockdowns, mindlessness. So many to discover each day. Isn't that great? Becoming
and
more
how
and
my
more
resources can bring me into a new relationship with them. Find the buried treasures that are there in those obstacles.
The wounded girl in the shadows, the creative woman in the light. And then that feeling, this is what is the core of my deliberate practice every day.
Play. Explore.
Open.
Dare.
Full woman's resources.
That Beautiful porcelain bowl.
So just take a few seconds just to complete that for yourself any way you want to. Mark that out, anchor that with a touch, a breath, a simple positive vow to yourself. So I hope that this gives you a little taste of sort of the core prototype of the generative coaching session.
And you can see, Stephen and I we know those steps very well, and there are many, many ways to do each step, and of course also to maneuver creatively within the steps. It's not a rigid technique. And this is part of what we're going to be going over in our 4-day program that's coming up, is how we're going to sort of be breaking these steps down into all the different ways that you can do them, or some of the different ways, because there's so many. And in 4 days, we'll be really going more deeply into how you can help to guide somebody through those steps. I want to say thank you, Andrea.
Andrea, anything briefly you like to say in closing, in terms of just our learning community here?
No, I don't think so. And I'm kidding. Yes, I want to.
I like that. You're already playing. You're daring to play.
I try to.
Hey, what are all those books behind you? What are those books behind you, by the way? What are all those books behind you?
They are a good friend of mine, most of them.
Great.
I want to thank you both, and it was a great session. Thank you.
Yeah, really, I appreciated it too. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
And what I also want to do is shortly, I want to thank all the people around I didn't see now, but I felt them. It was really it was a really good connection. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, all of you.
Yeah. Speaking of which, everybody can turn their camera back on.
Yeah, we don't have long given our formal time, but we wanted to have some time if there were questions. So especially, we're going to be launching this 4-day introduction to generative coaching in just a short time, and hopefully you get a taste here of not only the usefulness of that, but also for me there is a fluidity. There's my feeling in doing this with Andrea was it's not something that's like serious hard work. It's really a generative joyful exchange as well. So
I would say it's serious hard work and much more.
It's deliberate play and much
deliberately. Yeah, I like that term.
Yeah.
Okay, so Richard and Oksana, how should we select a couple people for questions or comments?
Sure.
And maybe from taking the questions from YouTube, or I don't know how we want to do that.
that we didn't plan on that.
Okay.
Great idea. It's a great idea. They could write it in chat. We're live on chat, and we could read you the question, I suppose. Why not?
Let's just go to people, given our shortened time, and let's hope that people on the screen are representative.
Yeah, please raise your hand if you want to ask questions.
Patricia Martinez.
Okay. Volodya, could you
turn your mic on, Patricia?
With us.
Unmute yourself,
Patricia.
Hello, Robert and Steve.
Hi, Patricia.
Yes.
We'll get her on the frame right now.
Okay, just a couple seconds. Okay.
It's an easy question. I'm wondering if in this last year you doubled your practice of coach state every day, so to live this what we're living with the news and all the situation.
My answer is simple. It's yes. I definitely increased my the deliberate practice of coach state, and I really it made a huge difference. And in fact, it's one of the interesting gifts of this last year is, yeah, that it really brought me to recognize the importance of that state and practicing it.
And
Yeah.
Steve, what do you say?
Yeah, yes, basically. I mean, I think I'm sure that if we asked everybody in this community, the answer would be yes. This has been 1 year from hell, really. And you know, personally, I didn't suffer too much, but the suffering of the world has been so. I mean, I just turned 66 last week.
Right. Happy birthday.
And this is, yeah, thank you. This is the most difficult year I've ever had, I think, that I've ever experienced. And it's not over. But I see, at least from the United States, I see two good omens, which is Trump got defeated, and there's a vaccine. So I see some lights at the end of the tunnel. But it's been, you know, so for me, then what the practice is and what you're looking to deliberately practice opening to changes with what's going on in life. Because to me, the biggest things have not been individual, but they've been collective and species, the environmental collapse, you know, which to me is the most significant, because if we lose that, we lose everything, and we're hanging by a thread. And so this sense of, in our practices, what are we being called to listen to? What have we been disconnected from in terms of Gaia or Mother Earth, or however you'd like to call her? And then all of the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter, everything is shaking so deeply at these profound levels. So for me, the whole notion of practice is getting quiet enough state so I can hold an intention of what I'm being called to reconnect with and give myself to. So,
Yeah.
so the nature of the methods that one would use changes depending, I think, on the nature of the situation one is in.
For me, it's that's really those three connections that have been so important, because I'm always like no matter, this has been a year of intense disruption, of uncertainty, and yet what I've always stayed certain of is, what is that intention? You know, what that is clear. Then the resources are what allows me to be agile in finding different ways to do it. I mean, this program that we're doing here right now, and the fact that Stephen and I have chosen to do the 4-day online intro, we would have never have thought about that a year ago. A year ago, that would have not even been on our radar. So actually, this is where even these big obstacles that we've met can turn into potentially, you know, big opportunities and big resources. So I think that notion of keeping keep your eye on the prize, keep the mission in mind, stay close to yourself, and then keep opening more and more to that field of resources. I think that has been one of my biggest learnings this year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that question, Patricia.
Good question.
Somebody else?
Or from or reading one from the YouTube if one comes up.
No, nothing from YouTube yet.
But
They're all, everybody's just thanking you guys from all over the world. It's amazing.
it's the star waterfall from all over the world, with gratitude and blessings and New Year greetings.
So, Zoomers, any questions?
I also am aware
Okay,
we're
Alistair.
over time, so maybe that's
Jehan in the corner down my corner.
Okay, great.
Okay,
I don't see
Jehan.
Jehan yet.
Mhm.
Okay, now we will find Jehan and invite her on.
There she is. Hi Jehan.
Hello, thank you. I wish you a happy new
Welcome.
year.
Thank you.
Happy
You
New
too.
Year, Jehan.
Sending you lots of blessings.
Yes.
And I was wondering, like, with the challenges faced in the past year, I don't know, I don't see the distinction between the past and the coming year, the new year. It is all, we all live in a one day, that's in my opinion, and we just experience glimpses of it, different glimpses of it, and it's all the same. But then there are times when we are to take life-turning decisions that are very important to us. There are times when we are to distinguish between being spiritual and wanting to let go of what we hold on to or to our attachments, and then liberating ourselves from what could possibly be holding us back, and trusting life and trusting the God, trusting the universe, trusting that we're all well and taken care of. And then between having to do what I have to do to ensure that everything is in place and everyone is also, I'm doing my duty towards my children and my work and my clients and everything. And sometimes I find a little bit of a challenge of distinguishing when do I let go, and how, and is it appropriate, and when do I become firm and I would have said that I would be a control freak, but not now, not in this situation, because it's not me about being in control as much as me doing my best to be up to my duties and responsibilities, and with what I know, doing the best of what I know, not letting go and causing, knowing that there would be consequences if I simply just let go. And allowed the universe to take care of things. And then when do I interfere and do things?
Okay, can I answer? Can we answer it?
Yes, please. Taking ecology of the whole system into consideration.
Yeah. Thank you, Jehan. My subjects are, this is sort of a version in the 6-step model of step 2.
Yeah, that was exactly
which is what's the intention of the question. And one of the things I think we can notice is the bigger the challenge, usually the more words that we're using, which is probably the opposite of what we want to do. So you may remember in the session with Andrea, I said, usually when we start with this step, clients just need to talk for a little bit, like you were talking for a little bit. Because it's big and it's got such deep feeling for them and such overwhelming confusion at some levels. So we talk, and then I would suggest that in order to put yourself in a position for any sort of generative action, you now restate it in 5 words or less. What's the question? 5 words or less.
And maybe finding your somatic model can even, like Steve was also saying to Andrea, actually having her follow the words following the somatic model. So as you really feel in your body what it is that you want, that balance that you want to find, or that question that you have, what would that look like as you find just those 5 simple words?
Now, usually what happens is it's not possible for people to do that. And what it will show you is the really rapid series of crash states they're going into when they hold that question or that intention. Say, yeah, but this, and then there's a, but those are all rhythm disruptions. Repetition, rhythm, and resonance are kind of the 3 dimensions of creative thought.
Yeah.
So that means, okay, we need to go back to step 1 of how do we just find some sense of settling before we set a goal or before we ask a question. Because if you're in an unstable consciousness, then any significant question or significant intention will not turn out well. So I hear you, but sometimes I'm hearing the struggle you're having. I would give myself at least a week to find a 5 words or less statement of that. It's been one of the more helpful things for me. So this is really a deep issue for me. But when I start to try to figure it out, it's just like this multi-labyrinth place. Every place is more confused. Coach.
Yeah.
Chill.
I think
that's my response. Thank you for bringing that up.
I think this is what we call the word that kept coming to me, or the phrase that kept coming to me as I was listening to your question, is what we call in the generative change work disciplined flow, right? So it's not just flow anywhere, right? And it's not control everything, right? So these are but they're two very important things, as you say. Sometimes I've got to let go. Sometimes I've got to do my duty. And what I would suggest to you as you are finding that intention is move between those two somatic models, which seem to me right now for you to be that kind of polarized, right? I'm either letting go or I'm controlling everything. And so really finding, as Stephen was saying very beautifully, that notion of that repetition of a rhythm until you find that resonance. So this is what I'm really looking for. It's not this and it's not that. Because when I'm really like this, all I want to do is that, and if I get too much of that, I go, oh, I got to do this. So I think really finding that sense and noticing then from those somatic models, what is that balance that you're really seeking will also help you find the languaging of that. That would be my advice.
Thank you very much. It's very valuable. Thank you. And
good luck.
When you said, thank you, when you said take a week to articulate it in 5 words or less, this week gave me the breather, like, oh, I don't have to do it now. I have a week to put it in 5 words. Thank you very much, Robert. That's very enlightening about the polarity of it, and then being able to flow between these two worlds in a way where it doesn't have to be either or. And it's
well, it's, you also have, another slightly different version of what Robert's saying is we find that we have multiple contradictory states inside of us. I'm supposed to be a good girl. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to be that. And when we have these big questions, it's calling us to bring all parts of ourselves into the question. And then we find a lot of those different parts of us just don't fit together. And so the notion of a coach state is going to a place underneath the structure, the coach field underneath the structures, so I can just be with boom, boom, I am. Boom, boom, I am. I'm my father's daughter, I'm the so-and-so's mother, I'm blah, blah, blah. And you realize I need to go back to boom, boom, I am.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Robert, should we call it a day?
I think so. I think we've gone over a little bit. So, and I hope that we've been able to sort of give a sense of what we're going to be going into more deeply in the 4 days. And I think those 4 days are going to really be where we're enriching how you can really follow these 6 steps, which I think are really so transformative.
So what we do is give the sort of overview. We gave a little piece of that today. And then we do the 4 days on like a half day on each of the 6 steps.
Yeah.
And we give a prototype method. We do a demonstration. We have you practice. We talk about applications. And so by the end, we then put together each of those 6 steps into one session. Sort of like what Robert and I and Andrea were doing earlier.
Yeah.
So
we hope that you come and join us on that more in-depth journey together, and you can see that it's something that I think is very life enriching, and I think very, very relevant for these times that we are in.
Yeah, and we, in ending, we want to thank Richard and Oksana for being the mother and father of the workshop. So thank you guys. Spasiba.
Спасибо.
Spasiba.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure.
I'll turn it over to you guys. Anything you want to say in closing, Richard, Oksana?
Yes.
We really immensely enjoyed that, and we're not the only ones. Well, I'm just reading the chat in YouTube, kind of monitoring it, and I mean it's really exploding. The people are so grateful and so just so emotional. It's amazing. We just want to say thank you.
And thank you very much for your generosity, for all those really beautiful, interesting presents you gave for the webinar participants. And if you guys did not have a chance to register yet and get your presents, in this video description on YouTube down below, you will find a link for register, and then in your personal account it will be 3 presents from Stephen and Robert. Thank you very much, Stephen and Robert.
Yeah, audio and video recordings really
interesting.
Not can't find them anywhere else.
Yes.
Hey, Oksana, where's the Christmas tree?
Oh, it's right behind me.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the Connors Christmas tree.
Yes.
I took mine down yesterday.
Really?
We in Russia.
You had such a beautiful tree.
In Russia, we usually keep them until May.
No.
Usually we keep ours till after Epiphany, so this weekend it goes.
Well,
In our family, at least.
Yeah, we keep it up a long time. By the way, as soon as you asked for questions, and the people watching on YouTube heard it, there were like about 10 really good questions, one
Yes.
after another. Obviously, we don't have time to take them, but I wrote to them and said, guys, really excellent questions. We'll keep them for the workshop in February, because
Right.
that's exactly what we need. So I guess, guys, everybody listening, I just say that if you enjoyed the last couple of hours, you're in luck. There's a lot more where that came from.
There's
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah, this is just.
Come and join us. It will be really beautiful international group. It will be people all around the world, all different kinds of professions, but we all really want to make things better, to improve our lives and the world around us. That's what is generative change are about.
Yeah, bringing light into the world, and that's what we saw tonight. Thank you, guys. That was
Thank
really
you.
beautiful.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Stephen and Robert. Thank you for all.
Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year to
Let's
everybody.
make 2021.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year
Year.
to everybody.
Have a generative 2021.
Happy New Year. Thanks, guys, from Tokyo.
Bye.
Beautiful job.
Thank
Guys,
you.
turn on your microphone.
Tokyo.
Turn on
Don't
your
go there.
microphones and videos.
Okay, you can
Volodya,
go to
what's
sleep
the
now.
plan?
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Steve, everybody.
Thank you. Happy New
Thanks,
Year.
Steve.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for the
Feliz
poem.
año.
New Year.
Feliz año a todos.
Don't go down.
Feliz Navidad. Daniel taught me to say that.
Feliz Año
How do you
Nuevo.
say
Oh no, that's
how do you
not-
say Happy New Year, Kasia? Happy
Feliz
New
Año
Year in
Nuevo.
Polish.
Bonne année.
كل عام وانتم بخير.
Now
Happy New Year.
we're all on YouTube on the gallery view.
Okay, let's hear Happy New Year in all the different languages.
Alles Neues Jahr.
Feliz año.
Gutes neues Jahr. Alles Gute.
Wow.
Okay. Kamna, you know at least a
Yeah.
couple Indian
नव वर्ष
dialects,
की
right?
शुभकामनाएं नव वर्ष की शुभकामनाएं that's Hindi.
Oh.
Sounds complicated. It is.
Okay.
Okay.
Eva, how about a little
Love it.
German New Year?
Frohes neues Jahr, ihr Lieben.
It was nice, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Who else do we have?
Bonne année. Is somebody saying bonne année?
How about Japanese, Alistair?
Kemashite umedetou gozaimasu.
Kemashite
There we
umedetou.
go. Where's Jehan? Do we have Arabic?
Yes. كل عام وانتم بخير.
One more time, please, Jehan.
كل عام وانتم بخير.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. How about our Spaniards?
Feliz Año Nuevo. Feliz Año Nuevo.
Oh, okay.
Feliz año.
Bon Nadal.
Same in Madrid, Blanca? Same in Madrid?
You're muted.
Same in Madrid. Yes. Feliz año a todos.
Em português, Feliz Ano Novo.
Where is that?
Aos brasileiros. Brasil, Hilário.
Oh, Brazil. All right. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
Let's
guys.
make this next year a great one.
Let's make the next year a great one.
Let's have a great year.
Let's have a wonderful year. Yes, full of connection and love.
We will make it.
So nice to see you all, guys. It's beautiful.
Likewise.
Thank you, Oksana, Richard, for
Bye-bye,
creating it.
everybody.
And Steve and Robert for giving this gift. Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely.
Thank
Pleasure.
you, Richard,
Pleasure.
Rosanna, Steve, Robert, everybody. Lots of love.
We don't want to go, but we will. See you next time.
We'll be back.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
be back.
Andrea for
Bye.
volunteering. Great.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
for our broadcasting.
Thank you, Richard, Roxana. Bye-bye.
Studio.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Until next time.
Studio.
See you again.
See you again. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.